That's the window where we are. There it is.
Bueno, así es. Estamos ya acá con Yan Pritzker, quien es autor de Inventemos Bitcoin. Estaremos conversando con él sobre el libro, sobre su experiencia previa también antes de escribirlo y también un poco ahora que es parte del equipo de Swan Bitcoin para ver qué es ese proyecto. Antes de empezar como tal con nuestra entrevista, saben que vamos a compartir un pequeño mensaje de nuestros patrocinantes, en este caso leden.io, una suite de servicios para que le añadas alas a tus satoshis, y también un mensaje de Bitrefill.
Satoshi en Venezuela es patrocinado por Leden, una suite de servicios que te ayudan a ahorrar y ganar más Bitcoin y dólares digitales. Nuestros productos te permiten ganar intereses, pedir créditos en dólares y obtener créditos para comprar más Bitcoin. Nuestras cuentas de ahorro en Bitcoin y dólares USDC, en colaboración con Genesis, ofrecen las mejores tasas de interés en el mercado, trabajando con la institución más establecida y con mayor transparencia de la industria. Puedes comenzar a ganar el 6,5% anual en tu Bitcoin y el 10% anual en tu USDC desde ya, y mantendremos estas tasas por el resto del año. Nuestro servicio B2X, exclusivamente en Lend, te permite utilizar el Bitcoin que ya tienes para obtener un crédito en dólares y comprar el mismo monto de Bitcoin, utilizando un crédito respaldado por Bitcoin para duplicar el monto de Bitcoin que posees. Y si necesitas dólares, pero no quieres vender tus Bitcoin, puedes seguir siendo el dueño de tus Bitcoin y obtener un crédito en dólares en 24 horas. ¿Quieres ponerle alas a tus satoshis? Aprende más en leden.io.
Y ahora un mensaje de Bitrefill sobre sus cuentas en dólares directamente en su plataforma. Y bueno, también aprovechar este momento publicitario para recordarles que se suscriban a nuestro canal, que es donde ocurre la magia actualmente. Como saben, Yan Pritzker es angloparlante, entonces vamos a hacer lo que hemos hecho con la mayoría de nuestros invitados angloparlantes. Vamos a estar conversando en inglés y traduciendo las ideas clave de lo que nos cuente Yan al español para quienes ya nos estén acompañando. Así que muchas gracias por conectarse y bueno, también muchas gracias a Yan. Thanks a lot for your time, Yan. It's a great pleasure to have you here since I'm really a fan of your book, Inventing Bitcoin, that is a bestseller here in Venezuela. We have a friend that sells a lot of your book that is really useful to understand Bitcoin, but we will discuss this today. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Thank you. Hola a todos y muchas gracias para la invitación.
Excelente español. Bueno, before we go through Bitcoin, I'm really curious on your background before discovering Bitcoin and deciding to work around this. Tell us a little about your background, Yan.
Okay.
Thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, so as you guys know, I speak a very little bit of Spanish. Estudio español en colegio, por esto entiendo más o menos, pero hablar es muy difícil para mí. So gracias para la traducción. So I grew up, in the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, and what is now Ukraine. Soy de Ucrania, and I moved to the States when I was a kid and became interested in computers at a young age. My dad was a computer programmer. Well, he was an engineer in Russia, and when he came to the United States, he trained and learned to become a computer programmer. And so I kind of like was around computers from a young age and learned to code. Went to school, computer science, linguistics, and kind of started doing startups in my early 20s, and kind of fell into the world of startups and doing technology, and was doing that for starting from about the year 2000, maybe a little earlier. So for the last 20 years, basically, worked with a lot of different companies, started a few companies of my own, and was involved as an early stage, engineer and co-founder at a bunch of places. And most recently, my most famous company was Reverb, Reverb.com, which was a place for people to buy and sell music gear. So I helped start that company in 2012 and was the chief technology officer for about 5 or 6 years, helped grow that business to $500 million a year in annual sales, team of about 150 people. And then I found Bitcoin and decided I had to drop everything and work on that.
Okay, nice. It's really nice to hear that you were successful before Bitcoin, and that was a decision to jump out of that to build new things with this technology. Let me translate a little of your answer.
There's a lot of stuff. And if you want me to speak in shorter bursts, I could do that too.
No, you can do your long answers and I will translate them. No problem at all. Nos dice que creció en la Unión Soviética y que por eso su papá estaba bastante relacionado con la ingeniería, que tenía conocimientos previos de computación, particularmente en Rusia. Entonces, cuando él es un niño, cuando es pequeño, va creciendo muy relacionado con esta tecnología, obviamente con las computadoras, y siempre como con ese interés, y aprendió a codear muy temprano, aprendió a echar código desde joven. Entonces nos cuenta que además desde sus tempranos 20, desde la primera edad de esos 20 años, donde uno está bastante activo, se involucró mucho con startups, bien fundándolas directamente él o bien participando de proyectos que ya existían. Can you repeat me the name of the startup?
The most famous one was Reverb, Reverb. Es un efecto de música, ¿sí?
Ok, nos dice que, exacto, esa empresa River de la que nos hablaba, que fue quizás la más exitosa en cuanto a los proyectos que había desarrollado, bueno, le generó bastantes ganancias, pudo combinar lo que ya venía trabajando con nuevas fronteras, y a pesar de todo ese éxito, igual llega un punto en donde descubre Bitcoin, y bueno, es aquí donde entonces podemos comenzar a dar nosotros el salto hacia allá. So you discovered Bitcoin, and then what happened? Did you fell down to the rabbit hole in the very first moment?
No.
Well, tell us a little about that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have same experience with Bitcoin, where they see it a lot of times before they really dive in. Some people get it right away, but it's very unusual, I think. So I actually knew about Bitcoin in 2011, and even bought a little bit at the top of the 2011 bubble at like $30, and it went all the way down to $2. So I lost all of my money. Right, like I didn't have a lot of money in it, but I lost all of my money. It went from $30 to $2, and I didn't even know what it was. I just bought it because I thought, okay, it's some interesting new open source payment thing, and basically forgot about it. And I sold all my stuff at $2, right? Like an idiot, and moved on with my life. And I was doing startups, so I wasn't really paying attention to Bitcoin. And then in 2013, again, I saw it, and again, pretty much ignored it. I mean, I saw the hype. I saw the Coinbase was coming on the scene. and I thought it was interesting. It looked a lot more polished, like people were actually investing time in this. So I said, okay, maybe this is something. Maybe I was wrong to sell it at $2. So I bought it at $1,000, and again it went down to like 300. And so I didn't know again what it was. I didn't study it. I didn't understand markets. I didn't understand the technology behind it. Nothing. So again, ignored it for another couple of years, and it wasn't really until 2016 that I finally like started learning, right, and actually like listening to videos, podcasts, reading books, reading articles, anything I could find in 2016. Finally woke up and understood what it was. And it wasn't a payment system. It was a new type of money that was going to change everything about how people were able to transact, with real freedom money all over the world.
Perfect. Let me translate a little bit about this. Nos dice que como muchas personas, a pesar de... La pregunta era sobre cuándo se involucra entonces con Bitcoin, que nos describiera un poco cómo da ese paso. Nos dice que como muchas personas al principio había desechado un poco la idea, que a pesar de haber conocido sobre Bitcoin en 2011 y haber comprado una pequeña cantidad de Bitcoin, no se interesó mucho e incluso sufrió la caída de precio en ese momento, de la burbuja de precio de ese momento. Entonces obviamente menos interés le generó. Se olvida un poco de esto, a pesar de que estaba entonces relacionado con startups, quizás no tenía mucha relación directa a pesar de estar ligado a la tecnología. Entonces allí vuelve otra vez en 2013 con el hype, nos dice, alrededor de Coinbase, y a pesar de eso nuevamente entra, sale con un 70% de pérdida más o menos, y no es sino hasta 2016 cuando empieza a aprender y a investigar con más seriedad, pudiésemos decirlo desde algún punto, porque al final uno se vuelve metódico cuando termina investigando sobre Bitcoin. Ahora vamos a preguntarle un poco sobre eso, sobre ya ese proceso de aprendizaje y ver cómo termina eso relacionado o no con el libro. Excuse me, after falling down the rabbit hole, then you start to write or start to just thinking about this, or and is this related to the book process, or are two different things? I don't know if you can tell us a little about this.
Yeah, so when I started learning, I've always blogged a lot in my life, or I don't know if I would say a lot, but I would write once a month or something like that throughout my career in startups. It was a way for me to process my own thoughts, right? I think when I explain something to other people, then I learn it better for myself. So I would write a blog to really explain what some new thing is, or something I'm thinking about. And same thing happened with Bitcoin. I actually started writing articles. I don't know when I started. Maybe it was late 2016. It might have been 2017. I'm not sure when my first Bitcoin related article. It would be interesting to go back and see. But I started writing it. What is Bitcoin? Why does it matter? And the first article I wrote explaining Bitcoin, I don't think I even got it right. I actually wrote the line at that time, which was basically from Andreas. I was listening to all of these Andreas Antonopoulos videos. And I wrote, Bitcoin is money. It's the first application for blockchain technology that we know. Maybe some others. I've changed my mind on that now. I think money is pretty much the only application that makes sense for, quote unquote, public blockchains like Bitcoin. But basically, I started looking at it as a distributed technology and listening to a lot of Andreas Antonopoulos videos. And there was the video called Currency Wars, which was the most important one, which really started to change my thinking from Bitcoin as a technology to Bitcoin as money. And that was really pointing out everything that was going on in the world in 2013 and onwards, Greek bailouts, the Indian rupee being changed, made illegal overnight, certain denominations, long lines at ATMs, capital controls. And I finally started understanding that there was a problem with money happening in the world. And this problem goes back a long time. I mean, even my youth, when we came from the Soviet Union, we did not have the ability to leave with the country with our money in our hands, right? The government exchanged $100 per person. That's all we got. We left in 1989. We got $100 per person. The rest of our money we had to leave or buy goods to try to smuggle goods out of the country or whatever. So capital controls was a real problem in the world, especially in regimes. Well, you guys know more than anybody what it's like to live in capital control environment where the government sets fake exchange rates and you can't get money in or out of the country. It's not a good situation. So I started seeing Bitcoin as money after those Andreas Currency Wars videos. And that's kind of, I started writing about that and started thinking about Bitcoin in that way.
Okay, let me translate this part. Nos dice que, bueno, le debemos mucho, muchos de nosotros le debemos mucho a Andreas Antonopoulos, entonces entre esos deudores está Yan también. Aunque bueno, con el pago del libro yo creo que ya está bastante bien hecho. El libro es una bastante... Igual lo vamos a comentar, pero es una bastante buena obra para gente incluso que ya haya empezado a investigar Bitcoin. No necesita ser un principiante ni mucho menos. Bueno, nos dice que después de haber visto muchos videos de Andreas Antonopoulos particularmente, no recuerdo exactamente si fue a finales de 2016 o inicios de 2017, pero ya empieza a escribir sobre el tema. Entonces hace una distinción interesante porque dice que se va dando cuenta de que si bien en esa narrativa que manejaba Andreas, lo más significativo era Bitcoin como una aplicación de las múltiples aplicaciones de blockchain, él, sin embargo, dentro de su propia investigación va dándose cuenta que quizás es más una revolución económica, financiera, que una revolución tecnológica. Entonces allí, a pesar de que obviamente crece su interés y va llenando ese interés con la postura de Andreas, va formando su propio juicio y bueno, eso me parece bastante interesante. Luego nos dice que cuando da ese giro ahí conceptual de Bitcoin ya no como tecnología, sino más como dinero, entonces va dándose cuenta de los problemas del dinero alrededor del mundo, particularmente haciendo énfasis en lo que ya venía, como nos comentó, había pasado su niñez en la URSS, entonces como ya venía de un background en donde el control de capital era algo común, entonces reconoce el control de capital como un gran problema económico alrededor del mundo y hace un comentario sobre que nosotros acá en Venezuela seguramente lo conocemos. Sí, exactamente. Uno se va dando cuenta de lo definitivamente problemático que resulta este tipo de controles y lo nefasto que termina transformándose como fenómeno económico. Y en líneas generales, ¿qué es como que el bagaje, el cúmulo de ideas a través del que viene a la luz entonces el libro? And then you wrote the book, or we are missing?
It was a journey. I started thinking about Bitcoin in 2016. I was still working with Reverb, and I was starting to research. I actually spent probably 6 months to a year listening to like all these blockchain podcasts. And I'm a startup guy, right? I'm from the technology world. So of course, after I heard of Bitcoin, my next idea was like, well, what else can you do? What else can we decentralize, right? Can we like have decentralized democracy, voting? Can we like do all the things on the blockchain, right? And this was a big 2016, 2017 theme at that time. Was what is the next Bitcoin idea where we can decentralize something? So I spent a lot of time studying all these decentralized projects, and there was, it's 2017, so there was every day there was something new coming out, right? And so of course it was very easy to believe there's something here. Look at, there's billions of dollars being invested into this. There's all these ICOs, there's all this stuff. So I wasted a lot of time on that stuff. And eventually, by 2018, I started to understand Bitcoin as the most important thing. I stopped paying attention to all the ICOs. I stopped paying attention to the blockchain stuff. I left Reverb to work on Bitcoin. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just decided I was going to work in Bitcoin. And I left, and I ended up falling in to a consulting job like right away, 2 weeks later. for a local company that was doing blockchain scalability. So I spent like a year with these guys learning about what is the blockchain scalability problem. Why is Bitcoin slow? Why are all blockchains slow? And as I was there, I was also starting to write the book to try to understand. Again, writing for me is a process of understanding. So while I was writing, I was also researching Bitcoin really deeply, really understanding how it works, why it's important. And that was the time when the SegWit 2x debate was going on, which was a very interesting time to start really researching Bitcoin as it's being effectively attacked from all sides, trying to be forked. So I actually understood that the SegWit fork would have no value. I wrote an article about it, so it's in record that I figured it out, even being relatively new to the space. But I don't think everybody did. I think there was a lot of questions in the air, a lot of companies and a lot of miners and a lot of people with a lot of power saying that they were going to change Bitcoin. And I was starting to understand, no, that's not Bitcoin. Bitcoin can't be changed. That the value of Bitcoin is that it can't be changed. You can't just make a new coin and call it Bitcoin. So by the time that kind of happened, end of 2018, my thoughts around that became very well formed. I finished the book and I said, okay, everything else is garbage. I need to work exclusively on Bitcoin. And started like just going around talking to people about Bitcoin, using my book as a conversation starter and explaining it to people in high schools and, whoever would listen.
Okay, perfect. Let me translate this because it's really...
And I can go into more detail. I just wanted to give you the high level, because there's a lot here.
Yeah, we can go there too. Dice que comenzó como tal este proceso porque le preguntábamos un poco sobre si luego de darse cuenta de que Bitcoin era lo más importante comenzó de una vez a escribir, y dice que no, al principio, y estando ligado con Bitcoin como tal con fuerza, sobre todo en 2017, también vivió la burbuja especulativa alrededor de Bitcoin, sobre todo llena de cosas como ICOs y la blockchain para descentralizar todo. Yo también pensaba que con blockchain se podía descentralizar todo. Nunca he shitcoineado mucho, pues, pero esa idea de que blockchain va a solucionar todo, sí, incluso pensé que se podía hacer algo para el control de armas con la blockchain. O sea, no sé, esas ideas que estuvieron muy de moda en ese momento. Entonces dice que también estuvo en esa idea, indagando, investigando muchos proyectos, viendo qué era lo siguiente que se podía descentralizar, porque como nos ha dicho... era o ha sido siempre una persona ligada a proyectos de startups, proyectos de empresas que innovan, que buscan cambiar paradigmas, y obviamente en ese caso la blockchain iba muy de la mano en esa narrativa. Entonces ahí ver la narrativa de 2017. Sin embargo, una vez que uno continúa la investigación, obviamente las narrativas se van desplomando, y es lo que le pasa a Yan, que se da cuenta que BTC era lo significativo, no solamente por precio, no solamente por el dominio en el mercado, sino por sus propias características, pero sobre todo por el debate de SegWit 2x. Antes de la activación de SegWit, para los que no lo recuerden, en 2017, hubo un debate muy serio con respecto a la necesidad de ampliar el tamaño del bloque al doble del tamaño. Por eso el nombre es SegWit 2x, que era una propuesta de respuesta a lo que sí se activó y sucedió, que era SegWit, que amplía el tamaño del bloque sin ampliarlo. Hace que, haciendo unos elementos técnicos allí sobre la firma y los testigos segregados, ahorrar espacio en el bloque. Pero esa posición de SegWit 2x tenía apoyo de empresas, tenía apoyo de muchos actores que podrían haber influido en la opinión pública, y él dice, yo me di cuenta en su momento que eso no tenía sentido, pero quizás no todos se dieron cuenta, y bueno, obviamente allí como que fue un clic significativo. Dice que incluso escribió unos artículos para apoyar a esclarecer ese debate en ese momento. Y deja un comentario bastante interesante, que es que el valor de Bitcoin es que no puede cambiarse de esa manera. No es que tú vas a decidir, bueno, quiero hacer esto así a la buena de Dios, y va a suceder, eso ya no sería Bitcoin. Entonces allí es interesante este proceso que vemos que no es que el maximalismo, que yo preferiría no llamarlo así, sino más bien la idea de que Bitcoin es lo interesante, lo importante, no es algo que uno descubre de la noche a la mañana. O sea, uno quisiera que todo el mundo fuese Bitcoin only desde el principio, pero este paso también se da, y se da sobre todo, y me parece interesante, para personas que están relacionadas con la tecnología. So you can go deep with some more details if you want to, because I think that people that is linked or is working on tech startups will be more, maybe they will shitcoin more than someone that is in a country where the currency doesn't work. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can tell us a little about this process. Nah.
I think that's exactly it. I think, and I've known many people in the Bitcoin space, and a lot of people with a story like mine who came from a technical background, and the very first thing they did was blockchain, right? Anybody with a technical background, if you show them like the Ethereum website, it looks pretty good. DeFi looks pretty good on the surface. There's a lot of interesting concepts being done there, and there's a lot of talented programmers working on it, right? The problem is that a lot of these people, I don't think, have taken the time to understand monetary theory, how money comes to be, how money works, and what are the actual problems facing the world, right? I think I was lucky maybe you can call it luck, that I come from the Soviet Union, and I know what it's like to live with capital controls, mostly from my parents. I asked my parents about it, but I know what the problems of that world are. You know what the problems, if you're in Venezuela, you know what the problems of capital controls are. But most people in America or Europe even, they don't know these problems. Our money mostly works. We're very lucky because we have the world reserve currency. We can print as much of it as we want, and people will still want it. Like, this is why we have no inflation. We export all of our inflation, right? Because people in Venezuela want our dollars. People in Russia want our dollars. Everybody in the world wants dollars. So we can print as many of them as we want. But this is not the case with most countries, right? And they find themselves in currency problems because they've screwed up their economy. Then they try to lock things down to try to fix it, makes things worse. And in the end, you end up with Venezuela. You end up with hyperinflation, or, Argentina has the same problem, Iran, Turkey, anybody who has tried to put a stranglehold on their currency ends up screwing it up even worse, right? And it's an impossible situation for a government because they don't want to lose control of their currency, but they are losing control. And the only thing they can do to try to fix it is more control. And so it's a bad loop. So I was lucky to have that background so that I could see Bitcoin as money. I think a lot of technology people don't see it that way. They see it, it's a cool payment network. We can do more things with blockchain. Let's figure out how to do that. And if you think about the actual problem in the world with money, it's not that, like some people think it's because people don't have access to the dollar. Let's give digital dollars to everybody. Wouldn't it be great if the Fed could issue digital dollars and give them to everybody, all over the world, control the whole world? Yeah, maybe it's great for the Fed and it's great for the United States. But is it so good for other countries to be so reliant on the United States as their source of money production? This is crazy. Like, the entire world economy is relying on us to not screw up the money. The United States dollar is the gold standard, okay? That is the gold of today. Everybody wants the dollar. I don't think it's a good system. It's a very bad system. It relies so much on the centralization of power in the United States. And I think a lot of countries are figuring this out, and they don't want to be relying on the US. And the people of those countries are suffering partially as a result of their country's dependence on the US dollar, and partially because of their own government's horrible inability to manage the economy. And all of this stems from the same problem. Money should not be controlled by governments. It should be a free market commodity, right? Like gold was. Like, if I take gold from the United States, it's just as good in Venezuela. I come there with my gold, I can spend it, right? But I can't carry gold very easily. It can be confiscated. It can be stolen. Bitcoin solves all of these problems. It solves the problem of capital controls. It allows money to become a free market commodity that can move freely between any country instantly. It can move inside of your head. This is the big innovation. okay, none of this blockchain stuff matters. The big innovation is freedom. We need to give people money that they can be free with. They can leave a country like Venezuela or Russia or Soviet Union with their money in their hand. That's the most important thing. And that's why, as a software developer, at the end of the day, I was like, what is the most important thing I could put my skills to use? What can I use my skills for? And the answer is Bitcoin. Like, the best thing you could do is give freedom money to humanity, right? And figure out ways to make that better.
Okay, nice. Thanks a lot.
That's a lot.
I think no problem. I think that it is kind of thinking that many people that is involved in tech will not really understand, since because it is not necessary to know economics to be a successful developer. I don't try to mean that being a developer isn't cool. I think that is the cooler of the things that are around Bitcoin, because you can audit and understand the software and make a lot of the stuff. But I am saying that you don't need to understand economics or money. Sure. As many people that is involved in the journalism as I am, so we are discovering money issues as money issues are in our face, as in Venezuela. I don't, maybe in 2010, when Bitcoin had like a year and a little, I don't get Bitcoin because the Bolivar was good and I don't need anything to exchange. My money worked, as you said. So
right.
Let me translate this. Le preguntábamos entonces a Yan para profundizar un poco sobre esta idea que nos comentaba de la tecnología y cómo la gente que viene con un background tecnológico posiblemente no se interese directamente en el lado económico de Bitcoin, sino sobre todo en el área tecnológica. Entonces, quizás en un momento son más proclives a entender Bitcoin como un sistema de pagos, algo que puede ser interesante como una alternativa a las fintech, las soluciones de pago fintech, pero que a medida que uno se va dando cuenta que realmente no es esa la utilidad de Bitcoin, va interesándote de otra forma en su funcionamiento. En este caso, un poco la fortuna hasta cierto punto de haber nacido en un lugar en donde los problemas del dinero se manifestaron bastante temprano, en el caso de la Unión Soviética, en el caso nuestro acá en Venezuela. Obviamente, allí uno puede entender las potencialidades de esta tecnología como dinero porque resuelve muchos de los problemas derivados nuevamente de los controles de capital. Entonces, nos dice que pudiese ser que en ese caso, inclusive teniendo el conocimiento de los problemas del capital, la gente pudiese elegir el dólar. Pero eso es realmente beneficioso. Ahí hay que verlo con lupa. Aquí en Venezuela, particularmente, la economía y su declive ha llevado a la gente a elegir el dólar, pero y como nos describe Yan, eso es beneficioso para la Fed, la Reserva Federal estadounidense. Es beneficioso para Estados Unidos porque fortalece su economía y la hegemonía económica de su moneda, pero no es realmente beneficioso para nuestro país porque dependemos de las decisiones económicas de la Fed y porque además no es realmente una forma de liberarse de los controles de cambio del todo. A pesar de que el mercado negro, entre comillas, del dólar en Venezuela sea muy boyante, el mercado libre de divisas sea muy boyante, igual los problemas del capital asociados a los propios dólares están allí. Entonces, por ello nos dice que Bitcoin resuelve esos problemas y que entonces ya habiendo pasado esta etapa de el ser deslumbrado por la tecnología blockchain, dice como desarrollador, quiero dedicarme a eso que puede brindar libertad en cuanto al control financiero. Me parece bastante interesante eso, poder ayudar a otros con esa libertad. And the book, when did it come to this strategy, or when did you decide to publish it to share this kind of freedom money?
So I started writing the book, I want to say in 2017 and maybe 2018. I think it came out in June of 2019 is when it came out, because I released it at the Bitcoin 2019 conference. So I think I started it in 2018. It took about 8 months to write, I would say. And so when I started, and I edited this book so many times because I started it as a series of notes. When I started giving lectures at high schools, which is a colegio, like people who are like 16 to 18 years old. Started giving talks to these people and explaining Bitcoin. And to prepare for my talks, I made notes, and the notes basically turned into articles. And by the time those articles were fleshed out, I was halfway into a book. So I decided, okay, I might as well make a book, and kept writing it throughout 2018. And again, this was during the time of Segwit2x. This was during the time of me working for a blockchain scalability startup. So I started like rewriting parts of it as I researched Bitcoin more. I effectively became more of like a Bitcoin maximalist, right? So I kept coming back to the book and like changing my thoughts. Okay, I need to, first it was very high level, like you don't have to, the original idea of the book was like, we're just going to talk about technology. I'm not going to try to sell anybody the idea of Bitcoin. I'm not even going to talk about economics. I'm just going to tell you how it works and you make your own decision. But by the time I finished the book, I said, I can't give you the technology without explaining why it's important. That's such a big part of it. Like, I can't just tell you this is a distributed system that does magical, it solves some computer science problem that nobody's ever heard of. That's not interesting. I want to tell you why it's important. So I actually spent a lot of time up front looking at what Satoshi wrote and what problems was he trying to solve. And so in the book, I really go and say, this is what Satoshi identified as the problems with money. Here's how he wanted to solve them. And the book helps you understand how you would actually create the technology to do that. And then by the time you go through that process, hopefully you understand, okay, this is how Bitcoin might have been built, and these are the actual problems that were solved with Bitcoin. But it's so important to understand Bitcoin as money, and that's why the first part of the book really does talk about economics. It's not as deep as Bitcoin Standard or something like that, but it tells you Satoshi's motivations and why money is broken in the world. And I think a lot of people don't understand that money is broken in the world, especially here in America. So it probably took me 8 months of going back and forth and kind of re-editing it. And by the time I was done, it turned into this like maximalist manifesto, which was not my intention going into it. It was like, I'm going to write about technology, and it turned into like, Bitcoin is the most important invention for humanity. Like, let's do this shit. This is what it turned into.
Okay, perfect. The book is really good, and it is really maximalist. I like it. I like it a lot. Okay, le preguntábamos si después de de este matiz sobre la tecnología y sobre la economía, ya ahí estaba el libro. Entonces nos recuerda que comenzó a escribirlo en 2018. El libro sale publicado. Nice, Swan Bitcoin with us. Entonces el libro se publica en 2019 y lo empieza como notas originalmente para dar conferencias o charlas introductorias a jóvenes en el bachillerato, jóvenes que están estudiando en el colegio entre séptimo y quinto año, no sé cómo se dirá en otros países, pero así es acá en el bachillerato. Y esas notas fueron pasando artículos, esos artículos fueron convirtiéndose en un corpus ahí y de repente termina dándose cuenta que hay una idea conductual, va haciendo quizás la pulitura normal de lo que se hace para hacer un libro. Y si bien al principio solamente buscaba hacer una explicación tecnológica, comentar cómo funciona Bitcoin y cómo es que termina Satoshi solucionando ese problema, la realidad es que se da cuenta de que no tiene mucho sentido, es decir, el cómo funciona Bitcoin a nivel técnico sin explicar la importancia y por qué tiene sentido hacer un libro de este tipo. Y bueno, al final se da cuenta que es necesario añadir una parte en donde se puede hablar sobre la economía, los conceptos económicos detrás y las motivaciones económicas de Satoshi para crear este libro. Y bueno, es por eso que la primera parte, sin buscar tener la misma profundidad de libros como, digamos, el estándar de Bitcoin, que es de Saifedean Ammous, termina completando entonces ese interés sobre lo económico, y en parte dice que, bueno, por eso adquiere ese matiz maximalista la obra. Acá Azor Code nos comparte un comentario positivo sobre el libro, unas felicitaciones directas para Yan. Excelente, además, porque es parte de la gente que sé que ha leído el libro. Acá en Venezuela es bastante interesante tener ese feedback directo con el autor. ¿Dónde podemos conseguir el ebook del libro? Where we can find the ebook or...
Well, the ebook is on Amazon. I don't know. You guys don't have access to Amazon, right?
I think not, but...
Yeah.
But
what I can do is I can give you guys a way to... We'll talk after the show. I'll give you a link you can send out to your listeners.
Nice.
I'll figure out a way to share it with you.
Yeah, bueno, Jesús, entonces ya lo acabas de escuchar. Después de que Jan nos lo envíe, contáctanos por DM en Twitter y te lo hacemos llegar también para seguir leyendo Inventemos Bitcoin. Can you tell us a little about before the publication, this editorial experience, because it's a Bitcoin-related book? So I don't know how is the U.S. publishing sector, but I don't think that people in Venezuela will be very interested in a Bitcoin only, even with the Bitcoin thing here in Venezuela. But tell us about this, the editorial part of.
So I actually self-published it, which means I did not have a publisher. I did have somebody interested in publishing it for it was kind of like a technology book company, and they did reach out to me after I had already put it on Amazon. They wanted to release it kind of officially, and they wanted me to take out all the political stuff. They wanted me to take out they didn't want me to talk about China, Venezuela. They're like, you can't talk about these things. And I was like, fuck you. That's not going to happen. I'm not censoring this book. You can't talk about Bitcoin if you're not going to talk about China and Venezuela. Are you kidding me? So basically I self-published it. It went on Amazon, and the way that I did the editorial process is I gave it to a lot of friends and also strangers, people on the internet that were interested in the book. I kind of started talking about it on Twitter, I think, at some point, Telegram with some of my some people, because I had actually gone to a class. It was a Jimmy Song's class about programming Bitcoin, and I had a group with some of those people. So some of those guys helped me out. Actually, my friend from that class, Adolfo, was the translator. Adolfo Contreras, who translated the Spanish version. He was somebody that I met in that class. So I had people like that, and I also gave it to people who had no knowledge of Bitcoin at all, including my parents. My friend who was a scientist but had no computer science or any knowledge like that. So I had a bunch of people look at it and tell me what was confusing. And a lot of the things that came out of that were actually really useful. Like my friend said, I don't understand why Bitcoin is important, and why do forks not have any value? What is Bitcoin Cash? What is all of that about? And I wrote a whole article, or essentially a section of the chapter based on his question. It ended up being very popular about how you can think of Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash, for example. So it's it was a crowdsourced effort. I had a lot of people look at it and went back and forth for maybe a month or two, and that helped to polish it up.
Ok, perfecto. Le estábamos haciendo preguntas a Yan sobre la publicación y sobre cómo fue el trabajo editorial. Pues saben que escribir un libro no es nada más escribir y ya. O sea, hay un proceso que pudiésemos llamar de curaduría también. Labor editorial nos dice que el libro fue publicado por él mismo. hubo interés de una empresa en su momento de apoyar a Yan con la publicación, pero a cambio de eso había que eliminar lo que pudiese considerarse político del libro. Entonces nos dice que literalmente les mandó a tomar por el culo. Fuck you, fue la respuesta, porque no tiene sentido hacer un libro de Bitcoin en donde no se mencionen temas políticos, no se hable de China, no se hable de Venezuela. Y a pesar de que la decisión parecería controvertida, más bien fue una forma de poder hacer el libro quizás más comunitario, en el sentido de que, como había participado en un taller, curso de los que da Jimmy Song, Programming Bitcoin, de allí, salió con un grupo de personas que ya estaban interesadas en Bitcoin, con quien pudo contrastar el libro, también con extraños, y particularmente nombra a Adolfo Contreras, quien es el traductor del libro, que también participó en ese espacio de formación con Jimmy. Entonces, en ese sentido digo lo de comunitario, que el libro toma entonces un tono en donde ya no es solo el autor Yan que sabe y publica lo que sabe, sino que lo somete al juicio de amigos, pero también de desconocidos sobre Bitcoin. En este caso fue bastante útil la comunidad y, bueno, poder contrastar lo que ya había escrito con el conocimiento de otros, obviamente, y algo bastante interesante. Azor, que nos había comentado enviando las felicitaciones a Yan, dice, this book made me fall down of the rabbit hole. So you made a awesome. Great Bitcoiner here in Venezuela with your book, so awesome. That's great. Dice también Yan, when we will have Inventing Lightning Network, maybe that could be a great book.
Yeah, I think Andreas is writing a book on that. He's gone kind of down a weird path. I have no comments on that. I still think his material is very good in the early days, but I think he's making a Lightning Network book, so we'll see. Like, I'm honestly. I've written code all my life, right? I'm a developer, but a lot of Bitcoin is very challenging. It's like a very different way of thinking from the kind of stuff that I grew up doing. Web applications, business programming, basically. Very different from cryptography. Very different from networking cryptography that is underlying Lightning and Bitcoin. I can understand it, but it's definitely like a lot deeper than the stuff that I usually touch, and much more application level. So I'll probably let somebody who's a lot smarter on the cryptography side, not cryptocurrency, to do these things rather than me.
Ok, le habíamos preguntado, aprovechando aquí los comentarios, cuando pensaba escribir un libro sobre Lightning. Nos dice que considera que Andreas está haciendo un libro actualmente, así que quizás pudiese dejar el proyecto en manos de él como tal, y que Bitcoin es bastante complicado, entonces que quizás va a haber personas que tengan mucho más conocimiento del lado técnico para poder explicar este tipo de contenidos, en donde el tema central sea Lightning, que si bien es Bitcoin, tiene sus propias complejidades, como hemos discutido acá en el canal de Satoshi en Venezuela. Si a alguno le interesa el tema de Lightning, en el canal tenemos una explicación de cómo funciona el Lightning Network hecha por Francisco Calderón, que es un desarrollador de Lightning Network, y una conversación in extenso con Sergi Delgado, que es creador de Eye of Satoshi, que es un proyecto de Watchtowers para Lightning Network. Esto suena como chino, pero en el video hablamos desde lo básico hasta las complejidades. Así que si alguien quiere ahondar allí.
I was going to add just that I think it's also weird to write a book about Lightning because it's such a rapidly changing thing. It's actually easier to write about Bitcoin because Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's like there's this much to it. You can explain the whole thing, and it's never going to change. The basics of Bitcoin are never going to change. That's the beautiful thing about it, and you can actually write a book. With Lightning, it's like anything could go. It's a totally evolving thing, and it's not as consensus driven as Bitcoin. So it can change quite a lot as technology improves.
Ok, además también nos dice que una de las cosas particulares de escribir un libro sobre Lightning es como que la tecnología está en pleno desarrollo, cambia mucho, va a ser difícil que el libro mantenga actualidad, a diferencia de escribir un libro sobre Bitcoin, que como estamos y hemos comentado, no es tan proclive a los cambios radicales, no está en pleno desarrollo de su tecnología y pudieses explicar de mejor manera y atender de mejor manera ese objeto de estudio. Tenemos más comentarios positivos sobre el libro. Yan nos dice, "This was my guide to understand the technical part of Bitcoin. Thanks."
I'm reading those comments. I can see them. I can understand them.
Nice. Ok. Y...
Muchas gracias por los comentarios.
Excelente. And then we can, before closing the book discussion, tell about the reaction, the community comments. You have a really great example here of the comments of the feedback, but what are your comments of these and the experience after writing the book? Did you achieve the goal that you was trying to achieve when you started, or did it grow bigger than expected? Tell us about this.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have a goal other than I wanted to have something to share with people when they had questions about Bitcoin. And I didn't, when I started writing the book, there wasn't actually anything else out there that I could give to people. Like there was Andreas Mastering Bitcoin. It's like this thick. It's for programmers. There's a lot of code in it. Not something I would give to my mom to understand Bitcoin. And the rest of the stuff that was out there was very high level. I didn't like anything, nothing covered it end to end to a point where, my goal with the book was, if I give you this book and you read this book, not only will you understand Bitcoin, you will feel comfortable explaining it to somebody else. You'll be able to defend the ideas around why is it scarce, how is that working? Are miners in charge? Are developers in charge? Who is in charge of Bitcoin? Are forks, are forks inflationary to Bitcoin? I would like somebody to read the book and be able to explain it. And I think from that standpoint, it's been very effective because I know that a lot of people read the book and then give it to their friends as a rabbit hole, introduction. So I was very, very thankful for the community response. I had some amount, people knew me in the technical space, but nobody knew me in Bitcoin when I came in. And the book helped me gain a profile there. Obviously, like people on Bitcoin Twitter started to interact with me. And I was very happy about that. They were very, very friendly and they gave me a lot of feedback, mostly positive. Some people had corrections, which I've worked into the book and I continue to do so. I just got a whole list of things from Kyle Rosenbaum, who wrote Grokking Bitcoin. He wrote me a whole bunch of things that I haven't even looked at yet, but I will be incorporating into my book. But, this is the kind of thing where it's a very strong community. People help each other. They look at each other's books and they try to improve everybody's work, because what we're all here for at the end is not to sell a lot of books. Bitcoin is still very early. Like I didn't make that much money selling this book, but I reached a large audience. And I know that a lot of people have bought Bitcoin because they read my book. And that's what's important. We're trying to get Bitcoin into the hands of as many people as possible. And this is why I even, in situations like where you guys have, where you don't have access to Amazon or something, I'll send you an electronic copy for free. Just reach out to me on Twitter. I'll send you an electronic copy, no problem. I know you guys are selling it on the ground over there, which is awesome. But people in countries that don't have access to some of this stuff, I can give it away for free. I'm not trying to make money on it. I just want people to learn from it and to give it to a friend that will spread the Bitcoin virus. The virus is spreading, as Pam says.
Okay, nice. You donate some books, and we was giving them in the meetups, but as the pandemic stopped the meetups, we made a giveaway with some more. We have a couple copies to give, but in the time when we are with the virus, we are trying to make another ways to give them, because it is difficult to send and
Yeah, we'll figure out a way to do it electronically. So yeah, I think that's not going to be an issue.
Nice. Well, I will translate this. Yo le comentaba ahí al final que Yan al principio de Satoshi en Venezuela, prácticamente cuando nosotros arrancamos el año pasado, nos envió una cantidad de libros para que nosotros también pudiésemos compartirlo con los asistentes a los meetups. Nosotros en las actividades lo que hacíamos era, como premios al final de cada meetup, regalábamos un ejemplar de Inventemos Bitcoin. Hemos regalado también Internet del Dinero y cuentas de ahorro de nuestro patrocinante Leden.io. Muchas veces, a pesar de que el primer ganador podía elegir, en vez de elegir el dinero, elegían el libro. Lo que quiere decir que el de interés es legítimo. Porque muchas veces uno se enfrenta a que lo que interesa de Bitcoin es hacer plata rápido, make money faster, a be rich faster scheme. But cuando uno puede entonces regalar un libro, que lo que hace es, como nos decía Yan, ayudarte a que tú entiendas para poder explicar a otros, te das cuenta que la búsqueda de la persona que elige el libro es bastante más legítima. Entonces nos dice sobre las reacciones que mucha gente le ha dado feedback, incluso el autor de Grokking Bitcoin le dio bastantes comentarios sobre lo que había hecho. Dice que el interés al escribir el libro es sobre todo de difusión, no es que se va a hacer millonario vendiendo libros, sino ayudar a que, si Bitcoin está en una etapa temprano, mientras más difusión, mientras más gente pueda ayudar a difundir la utilidad que tenga Bitcoin, tomando un poco esa idea de Pompiliano de the virus is spreading, mientras más gente pueda ayudar a que el virus se riegue por todos lados, pues más eficiente y más pronto puede ser el proceso de adopción. No que se va a hiperbitcoinizar el mundo, pero al menos sí poco a poco sumar más bitcoiners que entiendan por qué importa y cómo funciona Bitcoin. Entonces no tenían ninguna meta como tal, más que esa, poder tener un libro que le puedas dar a tu mamá o que le puedas dar a un amigo que pregunta por primera vez. Y que bueno, esas eran las motivaciones, así que en cierto punto ha cumplido el objetivo y además también ha ganado popularidad entre bitcoiners como para poder participar de la conversación, porque si bien su background tecnológico le daba alguna visibilidad en ese ámbito, quizás en Bitcoin no tanto, pero el libro ha sido una buena herramienta para entonces sumarse a la conversación. So we can close with the book discussion, and now we can go to the Swan rabbit hole. So you can tell us a little about Swan Bitcoin, what it is, and how you've been involved in the project and all the stuff that you can share with us.
Sure. Yeah, so after I left Reverb in 2018, I spent a lot of time consulting with different Bitcoin-related companies while I was writing the book also. And I met Corey, who is the founder of Swan, was the founder of Give Bitcoin at the time. And I started helping Corey a little bit with Give Bitcoin, consulting on the education side, looking at some of the stuff they were writing for educational resources, and started a little bit on the technical as well. And then really by the time November of last year came around, we were talking a lot. We ended up being advisors together to a different company. And we spent more time together and we got to know each other. And we really both started thinking that it was really important to build, Give Bitcoin was like how to get people onto Bitcoin. It was an on-ramp, right? It was like you give Bitcoin to a friend. But we thought the bigger on-ramp possibility was really just buying Bitcoin for yourself in a dollar cost averaging, continuous way. And we thought that Coinbase has lost its way. It was a good on-ramp in 2013, but now it's full of shitcoins. So if you send your mom there or your friend there, then instead of buying Bitcoin, they're going to come back to you and ask, well, should I also buy, these 30 other things? And it's just a waste of time. So instead of doing that, we decided we wanted to build our own on-ramp that was going to be Bitcoin only. Very focused on the idea of Bitcoin is already complicated enough. You don't want to throw 30 coins at people and try to get them to gamble on stuff. You want to try to explain to people that Bitcoin is a new type of savings technology. Like it's a way to save money, that money will be really yours and really free, like with freedom for the future, with optionality for the future. And so that's when Swan was born, November, December last year. We decided to kind of take the Give Bitcoin platform that was already there and turn it into Swan and make it something that was accessible to everybody. And unfortunately, it's in America only. There's a lot of regulations and legal things that prevent us from going into other countries right now. We don't know if we ever will. We may not. But at least for Americans, it is an on-ramp, and hopefully it's an example to other people in other countries. They can build their own version of this. It's a very simple thing. Just get people to buy Bitcoin on a recurring basis, but make it so easy and couple it with really good education. Our whole team is built around educators. We got Brady from Citizen Bitcoin. We just added Gigi to our team, who wrote an awesome book about his lessons falling down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. This is a team of people who care about Bitcoin, and they don't want to just sell Bitcoin. They want to create Bitcoiners. That was always Corey's thing, is he wanted to create the next 10 million Bitcoiners. And that's our mission. We're creating Bitcoiners. We're not just selling Bitcoin. We make money by selling Bitcoin, but the ultimate goal is not to sell Bitcoin. It's to have somebody buy it, withdraw it to their own custody, and understand it enough to sell it, to explain it to their friends. And so that's why we focus a lot on education. We have a weekly show called the Swan Signal Live. We put out blogs also, swanbitcoin.com/signal, and try to get people to understand why Bitcoin is important.
Ok, perfect. I will translate this. Le preguntábamos ahora sobre Swan Bitcoin, que es el proyecto en donde está envuelto ahora mismo, que
Aquí está.
Fuck, my neighbor is
construction.
Yeah, he's making his home better. Fuck. Well, nos dice que conoce a Corey Klippstein, que es el CEO actual de Swan Bitcoin en 2018. En ese momento la empresa se llamaba Give Bitcoin. Sin embargo, van trabajando juntos más tiempo. Son incluso asesores de varias empresas en conjunto. Y se dan cuenta que tienen bastante en común, bastantes valores alrededor de su interés empresarial en Bitcoin, y terminan entonces creando Black Swan Bitcoin, que es bastante parecido el nombre. Terminan creando Swan Bitcoin, que busca ser un on-ramp, una forma en la que uno pueda acceder a Bitcoins, que sea útil para las personas, que sea sencillo, y que además puedan tener educación. Hace énfasis en eso, que no es que solamente vas a comprar Bitcoin, sino que además vas a entender por qué importa, por qué debes tener la custodia de tus Satoshi, y que Coinbase ya no cumple esa función. Entonces la idea es crear esta plataforma para hacerlo. Además se ha unido un grupo de educadores, Brady de Citizen Bitcoin, el podcast, Gigi también, escritor de 12 lecciones sobre Bitcoin, y la idea, el objetivo que los une es, bueno, poder crear los próximos 10 millones de Bitcoiners y hacer negocio alrededor de la venta de Bitcoin, pero que la gente entienda y, bueno, tenga la custodia de sus propios Satoshi. Dice que no está disponible alrededor del mundo, pero que al menos en Estados Unidos tienen esa opción. Well, we can close with a thought on the future of Bitcoin. What are your thoughts, let's say, in the next 10 years? Do you think that we have, I don't know, a Bitcoin standard, or what are your thoughts?
I think we're starting to see the beginning of mainstream understanding of Bitcoin. A couple things that really stand out to me are last year's discussion in Congress. United States Congress had Libra, called in Mark Zuckerberg to talk about Libra, ended up talking about Bitcoin. So we have awareness at the government level. We have a lot of people, some people in government who are actually very accepting of Bitcoin and realize it can't be stopped. We have some people who are very worried about it, which maybe they should be, I don't know. I also think it's very interesting. This year we saw the first American public company, over $1 billion worth company called MicroStrategy. They put $250 million in Bitcoin, which is a huge move, and it shows Bitcoin adoption in corporate America. We have a lot of traditional companies like Fidelity coming in with solutions for institutional custody. All of this stuff, it doesn't it's not why I got into Bitcoin, right? I really care about Bitcoin as a freedom money, but I think it's really important to understand that these things happen side by side. Because Americans are buying $250 million worth of Bitcoin, that's creating the stability in Bitcoin so that people in Venezuela can buy $10 worth and get the hell out of the country, right? Like this, all of this happens together, right? The adoption by economies that are more free is also helping the adoption by economies that are capital controlled, authoritarian. So to me, any movement in Bitcoin's adoption is very positive. It doesn't matter if it's being adopted by banks or individuals. And I think it all happens at the same time. So I think in the next 10 years, we're going to start to see it become normal in a lot of ways, because first of all, kids are growing up in a world now where Bitcoin is native. If you're growing up now, Bitcoin exists. You're going to experience in-game virtual currencies. You're going to experience Lightning Network. You're going to experience Bitcoin before you ever touch a credit card, before you ever use Apple Pay, right? You're going to see Bitcoin first because there's no restrictions. So kids are going to learn it first. The adults, us, are going to teach our kids. So I think there's going to be an element of a generational shift where it takes the next 10, 20, 30 years for this new generation to be born with Bitcoin as being normal and native. But I think we're seeing a lot of moves that indicate that this is happening. So it's just a matter of time. I personally am always a lot, my predictions tend to be a lot further out. I think some people in Bitcoin believe that tomorrow the dollar is going to hyperinflate, just like the Bolivar, and that we will have the end of the US dollar. I really don't think so. I think the US dollar is extremely strong because it's the network effects of the dollar. Just like we talk about the Bitcoin having network effects in crypto, right? Bitcoin is the money of crypto because it has the biggest network effects, because it has the biggest distribution, because everybody wants to hold it. And once it has that liquidity, it has that premium. Everybody wants that one thing. It's the same with the US dollar, and it's not going away overnight. It's going to take a long time. We can print a gazillion dollars. There's still lots and lots of demand for it across the world. So I don't think it's going away, probably not in my generation. But I do think that Bitcoin is starting to give people an option that's not the dollar and not their local currency, which most local currencies are shitcoins. Those of us who have lived in countries outside of the United States know that most local currencies, they don't survive very long, right? If you're not the world reserve currency, nobody needs it. You don't need your shitcoin. Just like you don't need these other coins in their blockchain networks. They're not required. And when a coin is not required to sustain an economy because there's a much better currency out there, which is, let's say, the dollar or Bitcoin, then that's what everybody wants. So I think it's going to take a long time for Bitcoin to take any steam away from the dollar. But I do think that in the next 10 years, we're going to start to see people building up, what I call a stash of freedom cash. It doesn't probably rhyme as well in Spanish, but a stash of money that is actually yours that you can use if your government and your country is no longer a good home for you. How are you going to get out of there? That's what everybody needs to be thinking about. If you live in South America, Iran, if you live in the Middle East, if you live in Africa, if you live in a place that has capital controls and authoritarianism, you need to be thinking about how are you going to get out of there? And if it's not you, then maybe it's your children. And if it's not about getting out of there, then maybe it's about getting your government to wake up and act responsibly. And all of that comes back to having Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is your safety net. Okay, it's your Social Security. We have Social Security here. Who knows how long it's going to be around? Buy Bitcoin. That's your Social Security. That's your safety net. That's a check on your government's ability to print as much currency as they want. So I think we're gonna see all of that in the next 10 years. We're gonna see people. We are already seeing people start to buy Bitcoin. If you're in Venezuela, your currency hyperinflating. Every other country around you is buying Bitcoin. Everybody's looking at Venezuela saying, "Oh shit, we're probably next. we need to be buying Bitcoin. So we're just going to see more of that in the next 10 years. And hopefully Bitcoin will become seen as a normal part of anybody's, holdings. This is your cash. Bitcoin's your cash. You have some goods, you have some services, you have some cash, you have a business, you have a house, and you have some Bitcoin.
Ok, perfecto.
It's a lot.
Le hacíamos una pregunta sobre el futuro de Bitcoin y cómo lo ve de aquí a 10 años. Nos dice que en este justo momento estamos viendo un despertar del interés institucional, de gente que está comenzando a tener cada vez mayor interés en Bitcoin como una inversión incluso en el ámbito empresarial. Nos comenta el caso de MicroStrategy, que como saben, hace poco compró 21.000 BTC como un hedge, como una cobertura ante la inflación del dólar. Entonces, que esta es una primera etapa en donde va a haber probablemente más casos como este, pero que mientras que haya un tipo de decisión de este calibre en economías libres, esto también favorece el uso de Bitcoin en economías más controladas, como en el caso de Venezuela. Entonces, entender que no es que está desconectado una cosa de la otra. Dice que quizás de aquí a esos 10 años la generación ya sea más nativa a Bitcoin, vea Bitcoin más directamente en su día a día, y nos dice que pudiese calificarse como a little stash of free money, que sería algo así como un poquito de dinero libre. En ese caso, en ver que, bueno, en un futuro en donde haya más control en economías libres, igual puede ser una solución. Where we can find you on social media, or where are the best way to talk with you, and if the Swan Bitcoin signal have an educational site where we can find info, please share with us.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, SKWP, twitter.com/SKWP. And you can find us at swanbitcoin.com/signal. That's where we put all our blogs out. And you can also go to swansignalpodcast.com, where we publish weekly episodes. We have a lot of interesting guests on. We usually have two people who have never appeared together on a podcast. And we try to, get them to talk about interesting stuff, economics and technology and all that. So check it out, swansignalpodcast.com. And yeah, DM me if you want on Twitter, or we'll talk after the show. We'll figure out how to get you guys a copy of the electronic version of the book so you can distribute it out there.
Nice. Bueno, ya saben dónde pueden encontrar a Yan, así que bueno, esto ha sido todo por hoy. Vamos a cerrar este stream en donde hemos descubierto, bueno, un poco de los detalles sobre cómo es escribir un libro sobre Bitcoin y la experiencia de Yan. Así que bueno, muchas gracias a todos por su tiempo y acompañarnos aquí.